It started on an ordinary Thursday. I had just come back from a run, drenched in sweat, my heart still beating a little too fast. The summer heat clung to my skin, and all I could think about was getting out of my clothes. My brother Chase was blasting music downstairs with his friends, the usual gathering of too loud laughter and energy I didn't always connect with. I closed my bedroom door unbothered. I'd been living like a shadow in that house for years, quiet, observant, never the center of anything. Not like Chase, who burned so brightly that people couldn't help but orbit him. Especially his best friend, Brady. Brady had always been around, tall, broad-shouldered, with that effortless confidence that made people lean in when he talked. He was the kind of guy who could turn a compliment into a secret. Girls loved him. Coaches respected him. Parents trusted him. And me? I wasn't sure what I felt. Not back then. I peeled off my shirt, tossing it into the hamper, and turned toward my closet for a clean one. That's when the door opened. Brady. He stepped in, phone in hand, talking without looking up. "Yo, Jesse, have you seen my—" And then he froze. I froze too. There I was standing in just my boxers, hair stuck to my forehead, breath catching in my throat. His eyes met mine, then dipped lower for a fraction of a second. Too fast to be deliberate, too long to be accidental. He didn't look away right away. Neither did I. Then, finally, Brady blinked and turned. "Crap, sorry, man. I didn't think you were. I mean, your door wasn't." His voice trailed off into the hallway, the door clicking shut behind him. I stood there, still. The silence felt different now. Thicker, charged. I changed quickly, but my hands trembled. That moment shouldn't have meant anything. It could have been written off as an awkward accident. But something in the way he looked at me, even just for that heartbeat of time, shook something loose inside me. It wasn't just embarrassment. It was awareness. At dinner that night, I couldn't stop watching him. Brady sat across from me, joking with Chase, stuffing his mouth with chips, acting like the world was the same as it had always been. But I was different now. Over the next few days, I tried to forget. I really did. But then I started noticing things. Brady would bump into me in the hallway, his hand grazing my shoulder longer than it needed to. He'd knock on my door when Chase wasn't around, asking about things he could have texted my brother for. Once, I caught him watching me when he thought I wasn't looking. Not the kind of glance you give your friend's younger brother. It was something else, curious, weighted, confusing. I told myself I was imagining it. I told myself I was just craving something I couldn't name. But the truth clung to the edges of every interaction. There was something there. Something unspoken. Something not allowed. One night, I stayed up late working on a paper, and Brady came in with 2 mugs of hot chocolate. No reason. No chase. Just him. "You look tired," he said simply, handing me a mug and sitting at the edge of my bed like it was nothing. We talked for hours. About stupid stuff at first. Classes, football drama, music, but somewhere between the yawns and silences, the conversation turned real. He told me how tired he was of pretending, of being exactly who everyone expected. I didn't press. I just listened. And when he left that night, he hesitated at the door. Look back. "Night, Jesse." My name had never sounded like that before. I lay awake long after he was gone. I knew I was getting in too deep. I knew nothing good could come of this. But knowing and stopping are 2 different things. The next morning, he was back to normal, laughing with Chase, tossing a football across the backyard, shirtless and golden in the sun. I stood at the kitchen window watching them, a pit curling in my stomach. That moment in my room, the long look, the hot chocolate. Had I imagined all of it? Was I just reading too much into nothing? But if it was nothing, why did it feel like everything? I didn't have an answer. All I knew was that something had shifted between us, and I was scared it would break me. The house was quieter at night, like everything that mattered only dared to breathe after the world had gone still. That's when Brady and I started talking, really talking. It began with small things. He'd wander into the kitchen around midnight, yawning, shirt rumpled like he'd been sleeping but couldn't stay down. I'd already be there, pretending I wasn't waiting for him. We'd share cereal straight from the box, sitting on opposite counters like we weren't aware of the tension pooling between us. One night, he asked me why I always stayed up so late. I shrugged and told him I liked the quiet. He nodded like he understood too well. "These hours feel more honest, don't they?" he said. Like people stop performing when everyone else is asleep. He wasn't wrong. Our conversations deepened from there. He talked about his scholarship, how exhausting it was to always be on for his coaches, his parents, for Chase. Everyone expects me to be this unshakable guy, he said once, running his fingers through his hair. But I don't know who that even is. I understood that more than he knew. I'd spent most of my life being what was expected, quiet, obedient, invisible. Maybe that's why I felt so drawn to Brady. We were different, but we were both tired of hiding. Still, there was always a line between us. A thin one, taut and humming, like a tripwire. Every shared laugh, every subtle glance, every pause that lasted a second too long. It all felt like we were inching closer to something neither of us had the courage to name. One night, I caught him staring. I was sitting cross-legged on the couch, focused on my laptop, when I looked up and found his eyes on me. Not casually, not distantly. It was the kind of look that made my chest tighten, because it wasn't just curiosity or familiarity. It was longing, but just as quickly it was gone. He coughed, stretched his arms, changed the subject. I didn't bring it up. I told myself not to. If I asked, I might ruin everything. And I wasn't sure I wanted to hear him say it wasn't what I thought. But silence doesn't stop feelings. It just gives them more room to grow wild. One afternoon, Chase left for a weekend camping trip with some friends. I assumed Brady would go too, but he showed up at the house Friday evening, knocking lightly before stepping into the kitchen where I was reheating leftovers. Didn't feel like going, he said simply. Thought I'd hang back for a quiet weekend. I didn't ask why. I didn't need to. That night, it rained. Hard. Thunder rolled through the house, shaking the windows. Brady and I stayed up watching a movie, our shoulders nearly touching on the couch. The storm flickered outside, casting pale shadows across the walls. I could feel the tension between us like a weight. It wasn't in my head anymore. It was in the way his knee brushed against mine and didn't move away. In the way his voice softened when he said my name. You ever feel like you're waiting for something? He asked quietly, eyes still on the screen. I turned toward him. Like what? I don't know, he said. Something real. Something you're not supposed to want. The silence between us deepened. Yeah, I said. All the time. We didn't look at each other for the rest of the movie. But neither of us moved. Later, I went to the kitchen to get a glass of water. Brady followed. I could feel him standing behind me, close enough to feel the heat off his skin. I turned around, and suddenly we were inches apart. His eyes searched mine, not frantic or confused, but scared. Scared of what he wanted. Scared that I could see it too. Jesse, he said, like it was a question and a warning at once. I didn't answer. He didn't move. But then he took a slow step back, ran a hand through his hair, and gave a short, nervous laugh. I should crash, he muttered. It's late. And just like that, the moment snapped. Whatever had been building, whatever had almost happened, was swept away by fear. He walked off toward the guest room, leaving me alone in the kitchen with the hum of the refrigerator and the distant roll of thunder. I leaned against the counter, heart pounding, pulse in my throat. I should have felt disappointed, but instead, I felt something worse. Hope. The rain hadn't stopped for 2 days. Gray clouds smothered the sky, and the house felt like it had sunk into a quiet, intimate pocket of the world. Chase was still away, and it was just Brady and me moving in circles around each other, careful, charged, and possibly close. That Saturday evening, the power flickered once, then went out entirely. I stood in the hallway, blinking into the sudden dark. A second later, Brady's voice called from the living room, amused and calm. Guess we're off-grid now. We lit candles. Their warm glow painted the walls in soft orange. Everything looked different, slower, quieter, like we'd fallen into a dream. We sat on the floor of the living room, our backs against the couch. He had a blanket draped over his shoulders, hair damp from a quick shower, his knee brushing against mine every time he shifted. Neither of us moved away. We talked about nothing and everything. About the storm. About how we used to be as kids. About how time made strangers out of people we thought we'd always know. At one point, Brady stared into the candlelight, voice low. Do you ever wish things were simpler? I tilted my head. Simpler how? Like, you could just feel something and say it, without worrying who you'd lose. There was a pause. A dangerous pause. He didn't look at me. He just let the words settle, heavy and real. I couldn't breathe. Then he finally turned, his eyes meeting mine with a quiet intensity that felt louder than any confession. My heart pounded. His hand found mine, tentative but certain. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. The kiss happened slowly, like gravity pulling two things that had been circling each other for too long. His lips were warm, unsure at first, then deeper, more certain. I kissed him back without hesitation. I'd been waiting for this. Maybe he had too. Everything else melted away. The storm outside, the past, the questions. It was just the two of us, suspended in a moment we'd both denied ourselves for too long. He leaned into me, hands sliding gently under my shirt, his touch trembling. My skin burned where he touched me. Every breath between us soaked in the honesty of desire we'd both pretended not to feel. But before it went too far, Brady suddenly pulled back. Not harshly, not angrily, but like something inside him had snapped. His chest rose and fell fast. His eyes darted away from mine. I can't, he whispered. This can't happen. I sat up straighter, heart still pounding. What? He stood, backing away from me like the candlelight burned. Chase is my best friend. You're his little brother. If he ever found out. I'm not a kid anymore, Brady, I said, trying to steady my voice. It's not just that. His hands gripped his hair, pacing a small circle near the coffee table. This wasn't supposed to mean anything. The words hit harder than I expected. I stared at him, throat tightening. Did it? He didn't answer, just looked at me with something like regret. Then he walked to the hallway. Let's just forget it happened, he mumbled. It's easier that way. The door to the guest room closed quietly behind him, leaving me on the floor, heart open and bleeding under flickering candlelight. I sat there for a long time, the taste of him still on my lips, the heat of his hands still pressed against my skin like a lie pretending to be a memory. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there, slowly folding into myself. Morning came without a sound. He was gone before I woke up. No note, no message, just a coffee mug left in the sink like nothing had changed. Like I didn't matter. Later that day, Chase came home. He talked about the trip, laughed about stupid things that had happened, and asked if Brady stopped by. I nodded. Yeah, just for a bit. He didn't ask anything else. But 2 hours later, my phone buzzed with a notification, an Instagram story. Brady, with her, a girl I'd seen once before, wrapped around his side like a prize he was proud of again. They were at a lake, laughing, smiling, kissing, like I was just some secret he had to bury before returning to the version of himself everyone loved. I turned my phone face down. My chest felt like it was caving in. I wasn't just a mistake. I was disposable. The days that followed blurred into each other, a slow, dull ache that settled somewhere behind my ribs and refused to leave. I moved through the house like a ghost, eating less, speaking less, pretending more. Chase never noticed. Or if he did, he assumed I was just in one of my moods again, the kind of quiet he'd long since stopped trying to understand. Brady didn't come back. Not that week. Not the next. I didn't hear from him. Not even a message. Nothing. Just silence, thick and final. I kept checking my phone anyway, hoping maybe I'd missed something. A text, a call, an apology. But there was nothing. What stung more wasn't that he disappeared. It was how easily he did it. Like I hadn't meant anything. Like that kiss that night, that version of him I'd glimpsed in the dark, was all just something he could walk away from without a second thought. I spent too many nights replaying it all, trying to figure out where I'd gone wrong. Was it the kiss? Was I too honest? Too hopeful? Too much? Or had I just been convenient? A secret he could test his confusion on, tucked away safely in my brother's house, under the illusion of candlelight and comfort. When I finally saw him again, it wasn't planned. A barbecue at our place, family, friends, the usual loud mix of voices and music. I hadn't known Brady would be there until he walked into the backyard, a plate of food in one hand, easy charm in the other. He greeted Chase with that wide, familiar smile, slipped effortlessly into conversation, like nothing had ever broken between us. Our eyes met once across the yard. He looked away first. Something cold settled in my stomach. Later, I walked past him near the kitchen. He was alone for a moment, scrolling through his phone. I didn't stop. I didn't speak. But just before I turned the corner, I heard him say, "Jesse." I paused. Half a second, then kept walking. He didn't follow. That was the last time I saw him. I wish I could say it got easier quickly, but it didn't. Healing doesn't announce itself. It creeps in slowly, like sunlight through closed blinds, finding you when you're not looking. Weeks passed. I started running again, eating again, smiling sometimes, genuine smiles, the kind that didn't feel like performance. I spent more time with friends I've been ignoring, picked up my sketchbook again, and let myself draw without needing the lines to be perfect. Most of all, I let myself feel angry. Not at him, at the silence. At how small I'd made myself just to fit into someone else's confusion. At how I'd let hope blind me from the truth that was there all along. Brady had never promised anything, but he'd taken everything anyway. I wrote about him once in my journal. Just a few lines. He held me like I was fragile, then left like I was nothing. I haven't written about him since. Eventually, the ache became duller, quieter. The memory of his touch stopped feeling like fire and started feeling like shadow. He faded from my life the same way he'd entered, unexpectedly, without permission. But the difference was this. This time, I didn't wait for him to return. I let go, because the truth is, some people enter your life to teach you how to protect your heart. Some people come to show you the difference between what you want and what you deserve. And some people, they're just ghosts wearing warm smiles, hoping you won't notice the cold in their hands. I still think about that night sometimes, not because I want it back, but because it taught me something I never understood before. I was never the one who needed hiding. I was the one who had the courage to feel. And he was just afraid of being seen.